We did not have a technical glitch. That wasn't a technical glitch. That was a Pastor Mike glitch. I had to go back there and fix something I forgot before it was too late. Never expected I'd hear the Beatles in church, but that's okay because it's very fitting. You know, I used to make fun of that song. Love is all you need. You need a lot more than love is what I used to say. However, God would beg to differ with my attitude. Amen? Amen? Absolutely. We're going to do just a tiny little bit of review on last week. We're going to go to 1 John chapter 4. 1 John chapter 4. We're just going to hit on a couple of verses that I want to expand upon just a little bit from last week. 1 John chapter 4. We're going to verse 7. Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Then verse 8, whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. Skipping down to verse 11. Dear friends, since God loved us, so we also ought to love one another. But if we love one another, God lives in us, and His love is made complete in us. And then finally, verse 16. And so we know and we rely on the love of God, the love God has for us. God is love. Whoever lives in love lives in God, and God in him. This epistle from John is filled with the word love again and again and again. Now, love I told you about last week, agapeo. That's the kind of love that John's talking about as he writes in this. Just a brief summary of what all this means. I got to kind of bring it together to get to the heart of the message today. And that is, first of all, our love of God has to result. It must result. That's what the Scripture is saying. In love for other people. It's kind of hard to comprehend that, but it's very clearly what the Scriptures say. If you recall, when one of the teachers of the law came to Jesus and said, Rabbi, what's the most important commandment? Do we remember what Jesus replied? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, your mind, right? I like to paraphrase it with everything you got. Love God with everything. Well, what's the second most important commandment? Love your neighbor as yourself. Right? And the Scripture goes to that again and again and again. And the interesting thing is that it's only in God, and the Scriptures make this pretty clear, and just in general, and that is only when we love God does our neighbor become lovable. Think about that for a minute. Sometimes the neighbors aren't very lovable, right? I mean, in our own minds, they're not very lovable. So we need God's strength to love them, don't we? Sometimes that's the way we feel. Love them? Are you kidding? Really? I want to pray for them? I'll pray for, lightning bolt to strike them, but I'm not praying any other way, right? You ever feel that way? But yet the Scripture tells us, no, that's not it. We have to love. You know. Just as well as I do, that's really hard to do. Yet that's what God's love calls for us. That's what God asks of us. The interesting thing that goes along with that is the Bible makes it very clear that human beings, all of us, every last one of us, we are not just simply a collection of biological parts that God put together in the rules of nature and all that stuff and set us on our merry way with nothing else beyond that. We are so much more than just a bunch of biological pieces, parts. We're made in the image of God. That doesn't mean we look like God in the painting in the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, okay? Michelangelo painted that because that was his conception, okay? What it means when it says we're made in the image of God, we're made in the image of God's love. We're made to love. We are made to love Him. We are made to love one another. And it's kind of hard to comprehend that, and we don't often think of it quite that way, but that's exactly what we were made for. And if you take away the love of God, we see it in our world today, perhaps more than ever, certainly in my lifetime. When you take away the love of God and knowing God, you end up with mankind that's angry, unteachable, pessimistic, unimprovable, callous, feeble-minded, judgmental, angry, murderous. True? Without God. Without the love of God. Without returning that love in return. If we don't have the love of God in us, we become anarchists, violent, hateful. Okay, love. What does love mean? That's where it gets really tough. What in the world does love mean? How do we love? And it's an interesting thing. There's been so many things written about love, and one of the best things I've ever seen. Does anybody remember the book, The Road Less Traveled? It came out back in the early 1980s, late 70s or something like that. Written by a psychiatrist by the name of M. Scott Peck. I think the M stands for Michael. Michael's good? Okay. But M. Scott Peck, he always went by the name Scott. Listen to what Scott wrote. Love is the will to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing another's spiritual growth. Well, I never thought of it that way before the book. This book was a life-changing event for me back in about 1982. Life-changing. Love is as love does. It's not the words are cheap variety. It's love is as love does. And he goes on, he says, love is an act of will. We have to choose love. And then he continues, we do not have to love. We don't have to. We have to choose. I kind of like that. That works for me. Now, I could go on with philosophical ideas, reasons, and things like that until I'm blue in the face and would be here till, I don't know, 5 o'clock or so. I won't do that to you. There's so much to do with love in the world, and with psychologists and psychiatry and philosophers and theologians and things like that. But here's where the rubber really meets the road on love. And I don't have time to get to all of the connotations of that, so I'm going to stick with spouses, husbands and wives, mothers and fathers, our children, our little boys and our little girls. And they're always our little boys and little girls even when they're grown up, right? Aren't they? So much so. Sometimes we know less difficult than they were when they were 10. Either, right? That's true. I mean, it's just the way family is. And our neighbors, that unlovable neighbor. And this is the love. And that friend you had a big argument with, you haven't talked to for 4 years. My sister said, still mad about a friend she had an argument with when she was 10 years old. Now, I'm not going to tell you how old she is, because she's not that much younger than me. Sorry, sis. But she's not that much younger than me, and she still says, when that name comes up, she'll say, still mad. Man, that's a long time holding a grudge, right? Still mad. Holy moly. We kind of talked about that a little bit the other day. But we did okay. For now, let's hear what God has to say about love. I'm going to 1 Corinthians 13. 1 Corinthians 13. And I'm going to start with verse 1. And I didn't mark the page, so bear with me. This might take a minute. Forgot to mark the page. That's my brain again, not a technical issue, it's a brain issue. Okay, 1 Corinthians 13, beginning with verse 1. If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I'm only a resounding gong, just a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy, and if I can fathom all mysteries, and if I have all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains, but have not love, I'm nothing. If I give all that I possess to the poor, if I surrender my body to the flames, but have not love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It's not proud, it's not rude, it's not self-seeking, it's not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but it rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. I'm going to stop there. There's lots more good stuff in there, but I'm going to stop there because we're talking specifically about love and its application. This is important enough. I'm going to do something you rarely see me do. This is a big deal. I don't want to miss any of it. I'm going to preach from the pulpit. But I don't want to miss any of this. So I wrote this down very carefully. Each and every one of us hears that word over and over again. Love, 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 love. All of our lives. And some of us ask or wonder what it means to love, and we may turn to this expert or that, and the psychologists, the theologians, the philosophers I talked about, and ask or wonder, what does it really mean to love? And often we get long, drawn-out, complicated explanations like the one that M. Scott Peck gave, although I think he was right on. It's kind of long and seems kind of complex and hard to understand. Some of us turn to the Scripture. You may be familiar with those words that we just read, 1 Corinthians 13. Most of us are. Most of us can say that love is patient and kind, depart by heart. We know it. The words are so familiar. We read them, we hear them. I don't think we always give this concept of love enough thought. In every relationship, marriage, friendship, families, children, parents, there are times in our relationships, all of them, that are marred by anger or frustration. There are times we disagree, we grow impatient. Sometimes we might blame somebody else for our own impatience. Sometimes we even argue about things like that instead of the root issue that caused the disagreement in the first place. We end up arguing about whether or not we're mad. Ever been there? You don't have to acknowledge that publicly. It's okay. It's all right. So often our arguments come from our own attitudes. Just saying. Sometimes they do. And as long as we have those disagreements, I believe with all of my heart that the way to find an answer to those, to make it through those tough times, is to step back. To be quiet. To go to someplace else, some other room, take a walk, something. And do this. Take your Bible with you when you go. Turn to 1 Corinthians 13. Start reading those words. Love is patient. Love is kind. Not conceited or rude, seeks not its own way. Love keeps no score of wrongs. You know the words. And you go and you take your walk. Or you sit, whatever it means. Get away. And ask yourself some questions. Directly read it to the Scripture. Read the first part. Love is patient. And ask yourself this question. Have I been patient in this situation? Have I been patient in the events that led up to it? Have I been kind? We're not talking about giving gifts. We're not talking about took the wife out to dinner the other day. We're not talking about those kind of things. Bought the kids whatever video game's hot these days. We're talking about the kind of kindnesses that friends and lovers and couples give to one another. The kind of kindnesses we give to our children when they've fallen and they have a scrape on their arm or their leg, you know. That kind of kindness. I want to take just a little brief detour as we go along with this, and it's this. As we're looking through that, have I been patient? Have I been kind? Have I been conceited or rude? All of those things. We're going to be really tempted to say, yes, I have been. But they haven't been. They haven't done any of this stuff. They should read this. And we're going to be tempted to do that, and I'm here to tell you that's not the point. Okay, that's really important we realize that. Back to the matter. The goal is, are we able to say with honesty about ourselves? Have we been patient? Oh yeah, I've been patient, man. I'm so patient I should get a medal for this. I want to tell you, I've been patient. Yes, yes indeed. Okay, that kind of goes to pride. You see what I'm saying? It's kind of double-edged sword here. We are not to judge whether the other person is fit in this particular place, or made it, or made the grade, or whatever you want to call it, or been perfect. We're talking about us. Nobody else, about us. Because we all fall short of the glory of God, do we not? So the scripture says we all fall short. Okay. Love does not envy. How are we doing? Love doesn't envy. Love doesn't boast. That goes back to what I just said about the detour. You know, we can boast to ourselves about how great we are. See, it all connects. If we spend a lot of time in a discussion with somebody, with our spouses, with our children, with our friends, with members of the church, with each other, the people that we profess to love, and we spend all of our time talking about how great we are, how much we know, how much we get everything right all the time. Hate to break it to you, but that's pride, that's boasting, that's kind of some things. They're all in here. You heard them just a minute ago. Love is not proud. Have I been too proud to listen? Have I been too proud to recognize that I might have been wrong? Have I been too proud to recognize that maybe that person that we're so angry about actually does have a good point? Right? That's what this time away. Remember, we're somewhere else. To think honestly. And we can't kid God. He knows exactly where we are. He knows. As we sit in that private place or take a walk with nobody present with us but God, we have the opportunity to see things more clearly. Kind of goes along with the things that old mom or grandma or grandpa used to say, count to 10. Right? Count to 10. Sometimes it takes a lot more than 10, doesn't it? I think it takes 13. 1 Corinthians 13. And the verses go 1 through 13. See, 13 is not an unlucky number. 13 is a number that God himself kind of ordained in the 1 Corinthians 13 passage. 13. Love is not easily angered. It keeps no score of wrongs, no record of wrongs. Some of us got a list and we won't even be able to fit it on 5 pages. We got a list. I'm sick and tired of telling you this. I'm sick and tired of telling you that. When are you ever going to? Oh, great. Do we have to go through this all over again? Do you imagine how many times you've done this in the last 17 years? Right? We get on our high horse. Keep no record of wrongs. Comes from God. It says right here. Keep no record of wrongs. No score of wrongs, depending on your translation. So often, it's difficult for us not to respond in ways that hurt the situation rather than help the situation. True? In our anger. The Bible has something to say about that anger too, and I don't want to get too far off the path here because I got to stick with this. But the Bible says, be angry, okay? But don't sin. Did you ever hear that? It's okay to be angry, but don't sin. What's that mean? Be patient, be kind, keep no score of wrongs. That's what it means. Because we are to love one another, not beat each other up, verbally or any other way. Listen to this more. Love does not delight in evil, but it rejoices in the truth. There are times when we're in an argument with somebody and then somebody falls down or they lose something important or something not so good happens to them and we say things like, couldn't happen to a better person. Payback is sweet. You know what I'm talking about? Right? Okay. Divine retribution. Bet me, Buckley. It ain't divine retribution. It's just something that happened. And the evil is us rejoicing at their misfortune. Did you know that? That's true. That's evil. Certainly not love. So often in our lives, our friends, our family, married couples, church family, we get caught up in a game of gotcha. I knew it. I just knew it.
I'm going to be a site industry inspector.
It's time we play a game of gotcha with ourselves as we sit down with the Word of God in 1 Corinthians 13.
Delivery. No.
I believe one of the very best things that we can do in life is take a pause all by ourselves like I've been talking about. Always sit or walk and talk with God. And throw in some sometimes very difficult self-examination. And I think it's very important that we use the Scripture as our guide, and in this case, talking about love. Okay, we could take our walk, we could go sit in a place all by ourselves, and we got no guide to help us to see where we might have gone wrong. I didn't go wrong. You know what I'm saying? We need something to keep us on track. And I'm here to tell you that the Word of God, there's nothing better to keep us on track than the Word of God, most especially when it comes to loving one another. And here's where we hit a home run. If we pay attention to what God says. Love always protects. Let this sink in. Love always protects. Love always trusts. Love always hopes. And love always perseveres. Have I trusted? In particular, I think that one's aimed at marriages. Have I really trusted? Do I really think that my spouse wants something ugly for me? Have we trusted God? Have we trusted love? Have we trusted enough as we lay it all out before the Lord that God can help us? Trust is a big deal. Let me read that together. Love always trusts, protects. Love always trusts. Love always hopes. And love always perseveres. And to paraphrase the Scripture just a little bit, it's that kind of love that never, ever fails. We need help to love. It's so hard to do it on our own. And if we go back to 1 John 4, it makes it pretty clear. We can't love without first loving God and receiving His love in return. And it's in His power that we can have the kind of love that never fails, the kind of love that trusts, the kind that always perseveres, the kind that always hopes, the kind that's patient and kind, that doesn't keep lists. It's only with God. That kind of love can overcome anything. Lord, I pray for each one of you, and I pray for myself. That as we leave this sanctuary today and as we go on to celebrate our lives, that we can find that kind of love in our hearts, the kind of love that never fails, and that we can make a real, serious commitment to loving the way God says we are to love. Love that heals, love that lasts, love that doesn't fail. It may stumble, you know that, it will stumble, but it never fails, this kind of love. And so the question is, and each one of us needs to ask it of ourselves with sincerity, with absolutely understanding what we're asking. Are you ready to choose love? Are you ready?